and he took my temperature, and it was 103.5. They told my husband to think about compassionate removal.
Be Inspired podcast. Real stories from real people. Sharing stories of love and loss, struggles and perseverance, laughter and tears, and overcoming adversity.
With each passing month of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're hearing more and more incredible stories of survivorship. Coming up on today's edition of Be Inspired, we're going to meet someone who has beaten COVID-19, numerous other health challenges, and we're also going to meet the doctor who literally saved her life. Hi, I'm Burt Barron.
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
And we welcome you to Be Inspired. If anything at all that we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic is the resiliency of the human spirit, Lisa.
Absolutely.
Not all of us were able to get to the other side of this thing, but for those of us who are still here, the stories of inspiration are just endless. They really are.
They are, and it gives you hope when you hear the strides that have been made in treating COVID patients as well.
Yeah, and being joined by her husband of 30 years, Tony, it is great to welcome Betty Cere to today's episode of Be Inspired. It is great to have you with us here, Betty, and thank you for joining us here to tell your story.
Wonderful to be here.
30 years of marriage, and
They're still holding hands.
Well,
that's
How
a-
sweet.
This might be for the camera.
I'm almost 100% trained, but I got maybe 20% left.
wonderful thing to see. What was the life like for the series pre-COVID, Betty? Talk about what your life was before.
Well, I worked at a church for 20 years. He worked. We had a pretty decent life, and can I go into how the COVID happened?
Yeah.
I woke up and I was freezing and I didn't realize a lot I don't know. I put on 2 coats and blankets and he took my temperature and it was 103.5. He said, "That's it, you're going to the hospital." I remember walking down the stairs of my home and getting into the ambulance. And then I was put into a fentanyl coma at the first hospital for 31 days. I was in ICU with
She was intubated.
intubation.
So I think it's an endotracheal tube or laryngeal. I'm not sure the name of the tube, but it goes through the mouth. I'm sure you might have seen it on shows or whatever. And she for like 3 or 4 days, I had very little contact with her because she was on like a nasal cannula right away, and then I think some kind of a mask. And I think her phone even went dead. But I mean, I said I love you the day I put her on the ambulance. And after that, we didn't talk much. And last thing I knew, she was on a BiPAP mask, and the nurse said, "That's the bridge to a ventilator." Within 4 days, and then she was on a ventilator, and I was like, "That's all I can say to her now. I should have said more or whatever."
It happened so fast and so furious.
And I think the hardest thing for the loved ones that were not in the hospital is not being able to know what's going on, not being able to visit.
Exactly.
How many stories did we hear where, I haven't seen my mother, father, grandmother, husband, wife in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. That's got to be, so difficult for you.
To make it so much harder is all 3 of us got it, me, my husband, and my brother. And while I was I may get emotional, in that fentanyl coma, my brother passed away.
I'm so sorry.
And my brother was special needs, He was handicapped. He had cerebral palsy, so he was like our little baby, we protected him, and I couldn't protect him and I couldn't say goodbye to him, so that hurt real bad. So I was on both sides. I got it and I lost a loved one, and I'm coping with both losses, the loss of my, being able to get up and go.
Sure.
I'm dependent on my husband. I was never like that. I was very independent. So I can't really walk. I need the cane. I have, oxygen, and it's very, very hard. But I'm very much of a fighter.
You have to be.
I have
in
to
order
be a
You
fighter.
could see it in your eyes.
Oh, yes.
And Tony, I know you must have been, saying to yourself, you knew that Betty's brother had passed. Betty did not.
Exactly.
They couldn't tell me. My sisters were out of their minds because my beautiful sisters, Ruth and Joanne, they had to see one brother die, go to his funeral, and then see me and try to talk to me, and I couldn't even respond. I can't imagine their pain.
Well,
That had to be terrible for them.
Yeah.
As well as all my family, my nephews, my nieces. They just love me so much, my brother-in-law. And what I learned is that you have to forgive each other. You really do. Life is short. It could change like this, which it did for me.
Indeed.
It really did. But I also learned, don't take the first opinion, because they told my husband there was no hope for me. That to think about compassionate removal, he was supposed to let them know in a few days. He spoke to my sisters and they said, no way. We're going to find another way. I believe in miracles. I'm not continue fighting for her. And his brother, Matt, happens to know somebody that's sitting in here that is just marvelous.
Yes, he is.
And he looked at the CT scan with my husband and said, oh no, this woman's got life in her. He said she was looking for a sign, and the doctor said to him, this is your sign. And I was transferred to the name of the hospital again.
Jersey Shore.
Jersey
I
Shore,
don't want to say the original.
where we're under his care. And I want to say to people, sometimes get a second opinion, because I'm living proof that a second opinion can matter. Doctors can be wrong, and doctors can be right. They're human.
Right.
Thank God my sisters and him didn't give up. Thank God his brother knew that man. I'm sorry, but to me, you're just a hero. And to my family, we thank you and we love you. You're a household name. Really, we know Dr. Jeff. We call him Dr. Jeff. Hope that's okay, because we are just, I think he saved more than me that day. He saved my rest of my family. They would have lost 2 siblings.
Sure. Just another example, Lisa, of the seasons that we've had of Be Inspired, of how many times has someone been told that no matter the deck is stacked insurmountably against you, but we've seen people overcome over the odds over the years. And just to be in the presence of Betty here today, miracles really do happen. There's no doubt.
They do happen.
They do.
My kidneys failed. I had a stroke. I had blood clots. I'm a total miracle. And, I can't help it. He's marvelous.
When I hear stories like that, like Betty's and other people, I can only say is you have a purpose.
Yes.
Your time here is not that others weren't.
Thank you.
What do you feel now that you're on the road to recovery? How has your outlook on life, besides forgiving one another, and I know how precious it must be, what do you feel is your purpose, Betty, now?
Well, I asked God to show me. I have survivor's guilt too,
Oh, sure.
And so I said, God, why did you save me? And then I was asked to come on this. And I'm thinking, maybe I'll save somebody. Maybe my story will help somebody. And maybe that's my purpose. And I'll find out, I guess,
That's wonderful.
And I'll find out more reasons why I'm here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do it. And I'm glad to be here.
Do you attribute being Italian, too, to your fighting spirit?
I'm a feisty Italian. You ask him, I'm very feisty.
The first time I met Betty, she goes, you're Italian, right? Yes.
Oh, I knew it.
Yeah.
We're tough, right?
Oh, yeah, we're tough.
And I do want to
know
be here, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and I find out you're from Elizabeth. I grew
Yes.
up in Elizabeth, so
Unbelievable.
we know each other
We
from,
are. We're
from the
family.
past.
We're
We
family.
are. We're family.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
coming from Macaroni next week to Betty's
Tough
house.
city.
Yes. So I'm glad to be able to share my story, and thank you.
Have you had the chance to yet, Betty, talk to anybody that maybe has been through a similar situation that you've been in since you've been out of the hospital to just say, hey, hang in there, just keep fighting? Have you had a couple
when
of
I was
opportunities?
in the hospital, I did that.
Okay.
There happened to be a new person that came in next to us. And I told her, don't give up, please fight. And all the people in the hospital, I cheered them on. When I was in rehab, a woman had a leg off. I said, go girl, you can do it, because that's what we're here for.
That's right.
We're not here to hurt each other.
No,
We're here
not.
to help each other. That's the way I believe. That's the way I was brought up.
Yeah, I could tell. We
Yeah.
could tell. I mean, the world needs more Bettys around, right? And Tony, how has it changed for you, life, your outlook?
I mean, it was very difficult. And speaking about guilt, I had COVID the same time as Betty and my brother-in-law, and I had just the regular cough, the hard cough, and the fatigue and everything like that. So I have the guilt, and they were both in the hospital at the same time.
It's rough.
And they told me, they called me in. You couldn't come into the hospital, like you said. But
Right.
but when they called me in to show me the CT scan, at that time, I was able to see her in the room, at least. And I was even I opened the door a little bit too, just to like try to say, how you doing, honey? Hang in there, I love you and stuff. I don't know if I was supposed to do that, but
Did it
I said, it's my
anyway.
only chance, So then, but the guy, the doctor showed me the CT scan, his opinion, and he said, this is like 80% scarred tissue, fibrous, I believe is the word. And Dr. Jeff will explain maybe later. And he said, like, he was just like showing me, like, I was devastated because it was almost like, almost like a dead end. Like, okay, what do we do from here? The way he was explaining it, and I'm a scientific kind of person, but I'm like, normally there's treatment that, you continue.
Yeah.
This was more like a holding period, and they were telling me, and they did suggest, compassionate removal of support. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And they're like, well, she's on the endotracheal tube. We want to move those patients after 2 or 3 weeks to a tracheostomy, where it's more comfortable. If they stay on that tube, they're going to get more infections. It's a lot of pressure on the lungs, so the lungs could get weaker, this and that and the other thing. So it's almost like it's like a holding, like you're there 3 weeks, and if you can't get the tracheostomy, they move you to a nursing home or something. So we all agreed that, listen, give us more time. I'm not going to make no decision, and at that point, like I said, my brother, Matthew, was an integral part. He had known the doctor, the next doctor who you'll hear from soon, Dr. Jeff, and he said, why don't you talk to Dr. Jeff? And Dr. Jeff was nice enough to tell me to get the scans, get the CD, and you could do it. And the doctor there, even though he was giving, ready to set her out to pasture, he at least allowed to talk. He said he would talk to this other doctor from outside. And the rest is history. And Jeff actually sat with me and went over the scans on my computer in a Zoom meeting.
Wow.
So we were on Zoom and showing the scans at the same time. And he was telling me, scroll down, do this. And he says, I don't believe that this is completely 80%, like he said.
There you
And
go.
the rest is, and then I said, let's transfer her out of there. And the rest is history.
Well, you've heard during this segment Tony and Betty Cere mention Dr. Jeff, and if that name is familiar, he was a previous guest of the Be Inspired podcast series who was with us during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. And coming up, Dr. Jeff is here. He will join us coming up for the second half of this episode and talk about the long-term prognosis for Betty Cere and the difference that he made in her life, truly saving her life. That is next on Be Inspired. Welcome back to Be Inspired. Our guest on today's episode is COVID-19 survivor Betty Cere. And we're also joined by a previous guest of the Be Inspired podcast, who is Betty's doctor during this challenge in her life. It is great to welcome back. They call him Dr. Jeff. He's Dr. Jeffrey Miskoff, and it is great to see you again. Doctor, you were with us really in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. There were a lot more questions than there were answers when you were with us around a year or so ago, if not more. This has been an experience even for those from the medical side of this entire experience. Is that correct? There's been a lot of things to learn from the medical side.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be back, guys. And it's great to be with Betty here and see how healthy she looks now, because this is the first time I've seen her
For a while.
since she was sick, and I took care of her
Wow.
over at the hospital.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, every day was a challenge. Every day was a learning lesson. And when I got the phone call, and obviously Tony's brother Matt, I went to high school with. So that was the
wow.
connection, and it's absolutely true. He said, I just need a sign. He was being advised that it was probably too late and she needed to withdraw from care. And I looked at the CAT scans, as he explained, and I saw that there really wasn't 80% of the lungs scarred over. It was maybe 20% or 30%, or maybe it wasn't even that much scarred at all. So we learned each day how to take each case individually, never give up until, obviously there were patients that got to a point where they were just in so much shock and so many secondary infections that we could not save them. But I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that instinct with you, Betty. And so it wasn't just because I knew Matt, her brother, her brother-in-law. It was because I saw hope in her case. And I said to Tony, I don't remember if I said signal or sign, but I said, I'm giving you a signal. I'm giving you the sign. Let's bring her down and give it a try. Let's go down swinging at least. And she wasn't in shock at that point. She was on high oxygen when she arrived to our hospital. And we worked with her over those few weeks, and here she is. Trach out, feeding tube out, talking to me,
Yes.
looking great, unbelievable. So it was a learning lesson each day as we approached each patient individually and never gave up until we really, really knew in our hearts and our experience that they weren't going to make it. I didn't feel that with her.
What has changed over the months for you, Dr. Jeff, as far as things you've learned and, how to treat patients that you feel have a very good chance of beating COVID?
Well, thank God that the numbers are much, much lower. I mean, we went from over 150, even more patients, something like 80 ventilators, down to 0 ventilators today in our hospital. I rounded today, actually.
Wow.
5 or 6 patients on the floors, vaccinations, patients already had COVID. Obviously, we've learned tremendous amounts about long haulers, and I don't take care of Betty right now, although I would like to see you in the office at least once in follow-up. But a lot of those patients do need prolonged treatments, almost experimental stuff, because there is no great guidelines for long haulers right now. So we've learned how to manage people chronically that have made it out of the hospital. We've changed our strategies, slightly, and maybe even a little bit more from what we first talked about on that initial episode earlier on. But really, it's still a couple medicines that we're using and trying to finesse it case by case.
And have you, was it kind of like trial and error, and just as time went by, taking each patient and saying, well, I think that this would work for this patient?
Yeah, I mean, when you're desperate to make somebody better, when you don't see the x-rays improving, when you don't see the ventilator settings improving, your instinct as a clinician is to throw more at them. And some of those things that we threw at them actually caused secondary harm, but we were desperate. So I've learned, even in a case today, in a man that's not on a respirator, how to kind of pull back and pick and choose which poison is, I call it poison, it's medication, but some of these medications that heal you can also hurt you. So it really is case by case, but I think it's instinct. There is some guideline activity, but really it's case by case, and trying to watch certain markers and imaging and signs in each of those patients. With Betty, she came to me on a high ventilator settings, but not the worst we've seen. She was not in shock when she arrived. And I wanted to get her down to ventilator settings that were reasonable to convince a surgeon to put a trach in. And even though Tony explained that at the other hospital, they were saying that a trach really is just a prolonged death sentence, not necessarily. And, in my opinion, I've always, if I'm blamed as anything as a clinician, it's being an over-optimist. And most patients like to hear that.
Oh, sure.
So I didn't see scarred over lungs. I saw a chance to possibly heal. And I think you definitely deserve that, and here you are.
Thank you so much.
What can Betty expect, Dr. Miskoff, over the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? Is it steady improvement? Is it still kind of a wild card at this point?
Well, honestly, she doesn't remember me from the last day that I saw you at the hospital. So, she could tell you better than I can, and each case is different. But, a lot of patients had neuromuscular weakness. A lot of patients had prolonged respiratory shortness of breath and stuff like that. So everybody was a little bit different. But I think she can expect to continue to heal. She has a beautiful mind and mental attitude,
Yeah,
and
for
because of that, I think she will do great, and I think that she'll be able to encourage and inspire others.
I hope so.
How does it make you feel, Dr. Jeff, as a physician?
It's
Just-
amazing.
yeah.
This is what keeps me
Yes.
going. There's so
Yeah.
many cases that we don't save, and you get that knockdown effect that I think clinicians underdiagnose with PTSD, especially throughout this.
Oh, yeah.
So when you get a Betty, when you get a Betty Cere, it gets you back up on your horse and
so
you go back
glad.
out there, but you never give up.
Yeah.
See,
There-
that was a purpose now for me.
yeah, that's right.
I got him back on the horse.
That's right.
That's right.
There's only one Betty Cere, by the way. You know that.
That's correct.
And you owe him a lasagna.
Oh, I make good lasagna.
I can't wait.
Oh, you got it.
For people that have beaten COVID, Dr. Miskoff, what's the role that vaccines play for people that have been in and out of the hospital?
Well, it's still learning. We're still learning about the vaccines. There's been a study or so that have shown that if you've had COVID and maybe one vaccine, that may be enough. I think most of the COVID patients that were as severe as you, Betty, kind of want to take the second shot and just get protected for the next
Right,
round.
right,
But
yeah.
there's stuff we don't understand about the immune system yet with this vaccine, and I think that we'll know better within another year or so. Again, we're still learning about the vaccines and how to recommend them. Each case is individual. I get patients that are reluctant to take vaccines. They're scared. They've heard of people maybe having reactions to them. But when you look at the big picture and you look at the amount of patients that died from COVID and other viruses throughout history, it's certainly worth protecting yourself, especially if you have comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, et cetera. I am offering patients, with my group Shore Pulmonary to do titers after the first vaccine if they had COVID, and we can quantify that. So if your titers are through the roof and you're a little reluctant to get that second vaccine, it doesn't have to necessarily be at day 21 or day 28. We can check those titers and follow them, and every clinician will offer a different angle on that. But for me, I want the patient to be comfortable. I want them to be protected first, and I try and give them that reassurance and still let them know that we're not geniuses with every aspect of this care and the vaccine. There's still a lot to learn about it, and we don't have all the data. So, I may treat an 18-year-old differently than I may treat an 80-year-old and somebody in between. So,
Betty, if there's one thing or a couple things that you would like to say to Dr. Miskoff, what would you say to him?
This is so unique that I'm sitting across the person on this earth that saved me. Gave me back my life. And you gave my family, instead of losing two, they didn't lose me because of you. So you are a hero.
thank you, Betty.
Among doctors, you care.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad we knew you. Really.
And I didn't save you. God saved you. I was only
first God.
I
That's
was
right.
only the deckhand
Yes,
in that matter.
yes, but he sent you. That's right. Always cling to the cross. That's first. He's right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There has to be some crossing of the paths between medicine and miracles, Doctor.
That's
I truly
right.
believe that.
If I didn't know Matt in high school, her brother-in-law, this is just proof that the life is full circle and that
is.
things happen for a reason.
It is. It absolutely is. It's just so wonderful and heartwarming to see a story like this, knowing that your paths were meant to cross.
Yeah.
And, like you said, God had a huge hand in this, and
Without
Dr.
him,
Jeff
forget
was
it.
put in the
Without
right
him,
place.
forget it, really.
Yeah, at the
her
right
niece
time.
was my lab partner in biology class in seventh
Well,
grade.
there you go.
We didn't even mention that. But,
That's
there's
right.
a lot of connections,
Small
6
world.
degrees.
Right.
And I guess the lesson we could all come away with is explore every path. Get as many opinions as possible, Doctor. Try everything right till there's nothing left to try anymore. And something, if the stars align, there'll be some help for people.
And to get help early,
Yes.
I think is one of the most important things.
Yeah.
My sister's friend called me the other night, and she's COVID positive, and she had some risk factors different than yours, and I had her infused with antibodies within 3 hours of that phone call at a sister hospital that we go to, and she texted me the next day. And she said, by the time I got home, I already had gotten my sense of smell back. Wow. And this is an antibody cocktail that is being given now. And fortunately, we haven't had to use it in the last 2 months or so too much, but it was being used quite heavily early on. And of course, with resistance and Delta variants and all this other stuff, it worked remarkably. But she knew to get in touch with me, and not everybody has that connection. So it's most important to do what you got to do to find somebody, no matter how hard you try, within that first 5 days of symptoms, most specifically, certainly not more than 10, because patients flare at 7, 8, 9 days, and that's what we learned. And you don't want to get a false sense that you're getting better, you know, and then boom, it hits you. So you really need to reach out. Unfortunately, in your case earlier on, that part didn't happen, but we were able to still save you. And I encourage others that have symptoms early to get tested early and to find somebody early. There are ways, there's telemedicine docs that are into this.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be me. But, you know, getting that antibody cocktail, especially if you weren't fully vaccinated, is quite important, and the data proves it. And we can prevent hospitalizations and death 80+% if you're infused within 5 days of getting the test, or the symptoms rather.
Well, just having the two of you together on the set today has been very inspiring for me, and hopefully our viewers and listeners can share a little bit of the inspiration. But Betty, you obviously have unfinished business in this world, and that's why you're still with us. And I'm honored to be in your presence today.
Thank you.
So you've really inspired me, so I thank you so much for that.
Thank
And for you, Dr. Jeff, my doctor recently said I should cut back on bacon. I'm seeking a second opinion, so I might come and see you one of these days. So it is great to have you back on the show also.
Yes.
And what you have meant to this woman and her life and her family, it's hard to put into words. It really is.
Right.
But
Thanks,
thank you
Bert.
so much for
Exactly.
what you've done and what you continue to do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah,
And
great
Betty, of
meeting you,
course.
Betty.
All right. I'm Bert Barron,
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
and thank you for watching Be Inspired.
I just want to reach out to people who have anyone in the hospital for any reason, but in my case it was COVID, to get a second opinion. Because had I not gotten a second opinion and got it from this wonderful man, I would be under the ground. I would actually not be here to say hello to everybody and to tell you, don't give up. Try everything for your loved ones. Hey, look, I got a second chance at life. I can't believe it. It's wonderful. And that's because my sisters wouldn't give up and my husband wouldn't give up.
It's very important to get in touch with your doctor or your clinician immediately when you have symptoms of COVID-19 or anything suspicious of COVID-19. And if you don't like what you hear from that clinician, find another one.
Yes.
We're here to help you, so reach out.
Next on Be Inspired.
We opened a wrestling school, and here we are almost 25 years later. Many of our live events benefit local charities, and we're very active in the community doing community outreach. It's been a crazy ride with a lot of history. We lost Golden Boy Michael Cammett in a tragic accident.
The guys and you will be friends for the rest of my life, man.
Yeah, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Be Inspired with your hosts Bert Barron and Lisa Anderson Puleo. Directed by Rod Weber. Created and produced by Michael R. Doyle.
Co-producers Bert Barron, Lisa Anderson Puleo, Rebecca Gruber, and Erwin Sternberg.
Executive producers Rod Weber and Sean M. Sternberg. Editor Rebecca Gruber. Filmed at New Beginnings Foundation, Wall Township, New Jersey.
Season 5 of Be Inspired is dedicated to the memory of Golden Boy Michael Cammett. Michael was a rising star in the world of professional wrestling who died in a tragic accident this past summer. His memory and legacy live on in the lives he touched, and he will always be remembered by family, friends, and fans.